We'll gather around, feel the love come down. Blue elephant is strong, together
Hey guys,
we
welcome back to my channel.
belong.
So, about a month or so ago, I saw a video that Louise Singleton had done where she got like very, very thin acetate paper and she put washi stickers on it and then put it inside of a jar mold and added clear resin and whatever. Well, I thought that it was a really, really cool idea and I really wanted to experiment with it. So, I decided that that's what we're going to do today. Now, upfront and honest with you guys, my plan was to do it in both of these molds. However, I kind of changed my mind after doing the first one because I wasn't really sure if it was going to work for me and how it was going to work. I didn't really want to waste a whole lot of resin in two if I do something wrong. So we're just going to go with this smaller kind of round bowl mold today. And all I did was I mean, you guys saw, I kind of measured about how wide this mold is as far as like how deep or thick I need the acetate paper to be so that I can put my washi stickers on it. And I'm just going to kind of attempt to straighten it and cut it down to size a little bit more. I want there to be space on the top and bottom. I don't want the acetate to kind of completely hit the very bottom of the mold and then go all the way up because it does kind of curve in as you get like towards what the actual bottom of the bowl would be. So we're going to cut it down just a little bit. It's probably about an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter, I guess, ish wide for this particular one. And I have an issue with straight lines. Like, it doesn't matter what I do, how I do it. If I use a ruler or not, they're not going to be straight. They're still going to be wonky. So, luckily for this project, it really doesn't matter all that much. I mean, now if it was a crazy, crazy, like huge difference in size, then I guess it would. But the whole purpose of this is like, I want to make this acetate paper disappear inside this resin. Now, in her video, it pretty much did. There was a couple spaces here or there that you might be able to see kind of the line for the acetate sheet, but only if you're really, really looking for it. Well, I want to try and make it just completely disappear. All right, so now once I'm done, I am going to clean off both sides of this acetate with alcohol just to get the Sharpie markers off and any other smudges or whatever that may show up through the resin. And then I have these really pretty stickers. And I've been wanting to use these stamp ones, and I just think they're gorgeous. So this kind of seems like the perfect time to use them. I mean, why not? So what I'm going to do now is, now most of these flowers and everything, they're wider than what I cut down, but that's fine. We're going to put it on here like this, and then we will trim everything down to size after we're done kind of getting everything laid out. And of course, the actual length of this piece that I cut down isn't quite long enough, so I do need to attach a second piece to it. Again, shouldn't be an issue. But right now, we're just going to kind of work on getting the placement of which flowers I want, how I want the stamps to go in, and which ones. Where it's going to be more of a kind of gothic type style. Um, I'm not looking for like horror, and a lot of these vintage stamps are more along the dark, like magical kind of sort of feel to them. I'm gonna try and find the kind of brighter-ish ones out of them, but still not lose that vintage kind of gothicness about it. I hope I'm making sense. I mean, you can kind of see how a lot of these candles are like the blacks and really, really heavy on that. And it'll be great in about a month or so from now when I hit into the Halloween type feel, but that's not really what I want for today. So I'm trying to alternate it, trying to between the stamps and the flowers. I am going to go over and cover them little bits here and there so that it gives it some more dimension and not just a straight up and down kind of feel, and there's not a lot of space in between, because that's what else is going to kind of help this acetate sheet that I'm using kind of disappear. Okay. And then I'm going to do something that she didn't do in hers, and I'm hoping that it will also help with the edges of this piece of paper, or not piece of paper, but the acetate sheet kind of disappear. Is after I'm done getting all of this set up, we're going to add some stuff to it, to the bottom and the top of the mold, that will hopefully kind of draw your attention away from anything that, like, any acetate. I don't know. Well, you'll see when we get to that part. But right now, I'm just kind of putting it all together. I want to measure around here to see how much of this second sheet that I need, cut it down to size. Now, I am going a bit bigger than what I need. We can cut it down later, but I just want to make sure that I have it long enough. It's easier to cut away than it will be for me to go in and add more to it, especially once I get it shoved in here, because I'm anticipating that's not going to be really, really easy to do. And I am kind of trying to decide how I want to do it. If I want to add a little bit of resin first and then try and shove it in, or try and shove it in first, or what. Because the other thing that we're going to have to consider is bubbles, right? Because when I put it in the mold, I want it in the middle. I don't want it pushed up against the silicone, either in the front or the back. I kind of want resin on both sides of it. And that's going to be tricky to get it to go in and flow up in both areas without a lot of air pockets in there. So those are kind of my main concerns in this right now. But we're just going to kind of have to see how we get along when we get to that point. And hopefully it won't be anything too bad. Okay, so I've got all of the kind of pieces that I want in here, and now it is time to just trim down the excess that's hanging over. Now, you don't want to put this in here, which we could very easily do, but it's sticky, so it's just going to end up getting folded over or creased or bunched up and just look stupid. So in my opinion, it's just going to be best just to cut off these edges. And like I said, we're going to try and make the edge of this disappear anyway, so any way you go about it, you shouldn't see it regardless. But let's not make our lives any harder. Let's get this kind of done, taken care of, and then we can move on. All right, so we're just going to cut off the edges on this bottom piece and then get our resin mixed up, kind of let that set and degas. Don't want any extra issues with bubbles whatsoever while we put in our first kind of layer of add-ins and get this thing shoved in here somehow. Now, I've never done anything exactly like this before, so we'll kind of see how it goes. Now, I did leave the edge sticky kind of hanging over so that I can kind of stick it to itself for now. We're going to end up cutting that later. Now, what my kind of thought process is I want to go, pretty dark with this, and I thought some obsidian in here would be a nice kind of just bonus. That's gonna kind of be a layer that will help hide that layer of acetate that's going in that edge, right? At least that's my hope anyway. Now, I do fool with this part takes me forever between this and getting the acetate shoved in. I did cut some of it out. I want to make sure that my mold isn't bulging, and that the stones kind of have a nice thin layer all over the place. Obviously, I don't want it going up over my flowers. That would kind of be, counterproductive. But I do want it to touch them and be on the front side, not necessarily the back side of this acetate. So now I've got it in here, and it's just a matter of making it straight as possible, getting the rocks in position where I want them, and then fitting the size in there. and making sure that this isn't pushing my mold out and bulging it in any way, shape, or form, and just making sure everything is really, really good to go. Now, for this first layer, and I do have to cut it down some, the seam, however, I am semi worried about because I didn't make sure flowers were matching up on the sides or anything like that. So I am slightly worried about the seam kind of getting stupid. But if it comes down to that, maybe we can do something on the out, after it's done to kind of hide that. We'll just have to wait and see. I only mixed up about 60 milliliters of my Let's Resin epoxy resin for this. And the reasoning is I'm not going to fill it completely with this. I honestly want enough to kind of get in there and hold these rocks in place, hold this acetate in place. I am pouring it a little bit at a time, hitting it with the heat gun in between each pour just to pop any bubbles that may be there before kind of pushing it over the edge. Now you can see I'm lifting it up. I'm moving that resin around. I'm making sure that it's covering all the rocks, that the acetate hasn't moved, the rocks aren't getting stupid, and that this resin is kind of getting everywhere. Because now is the point where I could really mess this thing up and it can either be on one side of the acetate or the other, like the resin. And I just need to make sure that it's coming up on both sides of it. So I am doing this very, very slowly, pushing it in, moving it around, making sure that I'm keeping an eye on the level and where it's going and that none of the rocks are up higher than where I want them, adding it in areas that I am seeing that I'm needing it because it's just not flowing where I need it to go. Now, would it eventually? Maybe, probably, but I don't want to take that chance. And also, for the next layer, we're going to do something a little different, a little kind of sketchy. I don't know how that's going to work, but we're just going to see because this is not going to fill it up. So once I kind of get it to where I want it to be, I am pouring a thin layer of resin on the bottom. I don't want the bottom of this bowl to be completely just clear and see-through. And so I am pouring a thin layer of it just on the bottom. I'm not making it go over the edge unless it just kind of goes that way on its own. Getting the bubbles out, and then we're going to add a combination of this glitter glass stuff that I have between the black and the red to kind of pull out on some of those colors of the flowers and the stamps and whatnot. So it's going to be predominantly black, but I am putting some red in there just to kind of accent on those a little bit more. And then I'm going to kind of give it a little mix around, make sure that the resin's covering and hitting all of it, pushing it all the way, kind of flattened it out all the way along the edge. I'm trying really hard not to go too close to the edge to where that glass is going to slide down and get where I don't want it to be. Is this going to work? I don't know. I don't know. For all I know, the resin could decide that it's just going to go over the edge and it's not going to stay here and cure, or it's going to shrink up too much and just make it uneven. But we're going to experiment and find out, and hopefully it'll all pretty much just stay where I want it to stay until we can get that next layer on tomorrow. But I don't know. So we're just going to kind of go with the flow and see what happens and keep our fingers crossed. So once this is done, set it to the side, and we're just going to let this thing do its thing. And, I don't know. Okay, so 24 hours later, this is what we're looking like. Now, this resin seemed like it cured pretty well. I only did about another 60 milliliters. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going in there with some clear. Again, I'm doing it very slowly. What I decided to do is instead of just leaving the whole thing clear, which was what my initial plan was going to be, I am going to fill it up to the line where that acetate sheet stops and the bottom of the mold kind of starts. And then I'm going to add black to the rest of it. So the bottom of the bowl is going to be black. Now, as I'm doing this, you can see how I'm working my hands, and I wish I had a camera angle that was better for you to actually see. I can really see the air pockets in here and where they are, where that resin isn't going. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my dotting tool, and I realize I'm pulling it away from it, but I'd rather have the resin in there than not. And I am filling up those air holes with resin. I am pushing the air up and out the mold and kind of tilting it to the side as I do it to make sure that it's resin going back in and not just air until I can't see those air pockets anymore. So, very slowly, just doing it, working it out, taking the time to make sure that it's everywhere. And then I will go back around again. And you can see in certain parts where I'm pushing it up, that air pop, like a big bubble just coming up and popping. Like, and then it goes away. Like right there, you can kind of sort of see it coming up. And then I'm just adding more resin and then letting it kind of suck down the resin instead of more air. Because I'm trying not to get a bunch of clear on the top because I want this to be black. Okay, hit it with the heat gun. Nice and good. Checking to make sure that there's no other bubbles. We're going to work them out if there are. Think it looks pretty good. So now it's time to kind of get ready to add this black pigment paste to it. As soon as I'm done with this one last air pocket that I found. And double checking it all again. Okay, we're good on that. So now I'm just going to take some Rolio black pigment paste and add it to the rest of this resin that I have left. And then we are going to pour this in. Now, can it merge with this clear? Absolutely, of course it can. In fact, to an extent, I'm going to make it because I want it to kind of merge right where that seam line is, where the acetate sheet kind of stops. So I want to make sure it goes into at least that point, but not much farther down than that because I don't want it to cover the washi tape that I have in there. I just want it to cover that kind of seam line that you're going to see if I don't. So very slowly, I poured it in kind of around. Now you can look and you can actually see where it's going down. So what I'm going to do is right along this edge here, I'm just going to take this black around so that it's completely even going across. I'm not pushing it down. I'm just kind of spreading it in that area. And that's it. We're going to let this be and keep our fingers or toes, everything crossed, praying that this works out the way that I want it to. Okay, guys, moment of truth. 24 hours later, and it's time to demold this. And I mean, just from what I could see through the mold, I think it's gonna look really cool, but I'm not 100% sure yet. Just trying to get my grip on that mold and break that seal. And oh, come on, please hurry. I'm so excited about this. I've been wanting to try this for a hot minute now, and I'm just finally now kind of got the inspiration on exactly what it was I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. So it's always fun when you get to try something new and you're just waiting to kind of see what the outcome was and if you got it or not. All right, come on, come on, come on. Oh my goodness. All right, here we go. I am in love. We have 0 bubbles. There's not one bubble in here whatsoever. It all worked out perfectly. I can't see the seams on either side, the top or the bottom of this. I mean, it's just gorgeous. And I don't even mind the white on the inside of it. Anyway, that's a wrap on this one, guys. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. I will see you on Saturday in the next one. Love ya. Bye.
Blue elephant is strong. Together we belong. In every comment, right? You live.